Hello again, future relatives and friends. It's Uncle Jeff with Psychic Stuff Part 4. We'll start again back in 1990. Randy and I had a timeshare. We traded it to Maui because we could get 2 weeks and it was a 2-bedroom place, and we could take our friends Rob and Jack for the first week, and then we invited our Minneapolis and St. Paul friends, Corky, Bill, and Hadley, to come for the second week. While there with Rob and Jack, we wanted to go up to the top of Haleakala, the spiritual mountain on Maui. So we went up there one morning, and we didn't realize how cold it was going to be. It was about 42 degrees up there, and we only had t-shirts and one pair of long pants, which we wore. I remember I had about 4 t-shirts on trying to stay warm. The other 3 wanted to walk around the area and see that the moonlight surface up there that was actually used to train the astronauts for the moon landing. I was more interested in doing a meditation there. So I said, okay, you go walking and I'm going to stay in the car and do my meditation. And I didn't want to bother them with that and have them have to sit around while I did my own thing. So I aimed the car at the sun so I got some warmth in it and got comfortable and went into a meditation. And I think they were gone about a half an hour and they got cold and came back. So during this meditation, I once again got a design burned into my consciousness, just like I did at the temple in Encinitas. And this point started drawing a design, and it came out in the same greenish fluorescent lines. And I luckily had a piece of paper in the car and a pen, and when I came out of it, I drew the design out because it made no sense to me, and I wanted to ask people about it. Now, since then, I've lost the paper, but I sort of remember what it looks like. It was roughly something like this, and that circular thing kind of reminded me of the Zuni sun from New Mexico. You see it on their license plates. The other stuff was just, triangles and lines. And I showed it around to various psychics and mediums in Phoenix, and they didn't really have anything to say about it, so I felt they were being honest. However, Randy had a friend, Archie Tanabe, who was about 7/8 Hawaiian. Part of his father's family was Japanese, but he was really Hawaiian. And he was Randy's AA sponsor, so we saw him quite a lot. And he came over and he said, Archie, I got this on Haleakala. And he took one look at it and he went like that. He just reacted immediately to it, and the hairs stood up on the back of his neck. And he said, that's the kind of thing that Madame Pele brings down to the shamans and the healers. And he says, I've seen things like that before, almost the same kind of structure. And I said, well, what does it mean? He says, well, I don't really know, but he said, I know it's from her. That's the spirit of the mountain, because mountains do carry spirit energy. And that's especially part of a Hawaiian tradition. And of course, Madame Pele is usually referred to in Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea on the island of Hawaii next door, but that was sort of his interpretation of that thing I got in meditation. About the same time, I noticed I could sometimes see auras on people. It didn't happen very much, but when I would go to meditation services at Self-Realization, the monk that I liked a lot there, Brother Dharmananda, he was a heavy, jolly guy. And when he would be playing the harmonium before we meditated, that we would chant to the harmonium, I would sit there and sort of look over the top of my glasses at him, sort of at an angle. And this green outline would come around his body, maybe about that wide. And that's the color of the heart chakra. And of course, he was, full of heart energy. And I could see that even when he was just talking from the podium, if I concentrated. Then I had one other much more dramatic auric experience. It was with a patient. He was the last patient of the day. I was totally relaxed. I didn't have to worry about trying to hurry up because I was behind. It was a man in his mid to late 70s, and he came in for something routine, but we got to talking about spiritual things, and he said, well, he had been an oil rigger all his life and worked in those very masculine fields and very basic stuff in Texas. He was from Texas. But he found that once he retired and got into his late 60s, that he started developing the ability to write poetry. It was totally unlike his his bulldog personality that went along with working in the oil industry in the fields. And he said he took a cassette recorder anytime he would take a long trip from Phoenix back to Texas to visit his family. He would just start channeling or hear poetry come into his head, and he'd click on the recorder while he was driving across miles and miles of West Texas and record his poetry. I was standing sort of next to him as he was telling the story, so I could look down his arms and hands, and as he was waxing poetic about how he could do poetry, this yellow color just enveloped his arms and went down and streamed off the ends of his fingers and sort of into space, and did that sort of computer dissolve like I saw with the other meditation, just like that. And I thought, okay, that's yellow, that's the third chakra, or the solar plexus, and that's your creative area and the things that you put your effort into. So that was my other experience with that. So around the same time, I was becoming interested in alternative medicine and holistic medicine, and I had done reading about various types of this, and I knew there was a clinic in Phoenix that followed the treatments and readings of the American man called the Sleeping Prophet, Edgar Cayce. He was a simple man from Kentucky. He could go into a trance. He wouldn't remember what he said, but he would remotely view patients in another city, describe their health problems, and then prescribe unusual treatments such as cold castor oil packs on natural cotton put over the liver, and kind of odd stuff like that. His wife would sit and write down the results and then transcribe it and mail it to the person. All the person had to do was be at the address they said at the time of the appointment, and he would do remote viewing, and he would lie in his house in Louisville or wherever he was, and then he'd say, okay, I have St. Louis, and I have Oak Street, Maple Street, Pine Street, 2251, I have the entity, and he would literally name off the streets until he got it. The person wasn't there, he couldn't connect. So he was a skeptic and very religious, and when he was not in the trance state, he a lot of times had a hard time believing what he was doing. But there it was for evidence. The Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach chronicled all of his readings, did follow-ups with as many patients as they could to see which remedies actually worked and what the percentage of accuracy was, and they compiled all this. And then in Phoenix, the Gladys and Bill McGarry founded the first ARE medical clinic in 1955. After he had an affair with the office manager, she divorced him, and she and now her adult daughter, who was a physician, founded the Scottsdale Holistic Clinic. So I met them and I was interested in going there. So I left my regular family practice at Cigna and joined them for about 35 hours a week. And of course I wasn't making very much money there, so I continued working in urgent care one night during the week, and usually 1 or 2 weekend days just to make up for it. And I did this for about 18 months. I learned a lot of different things and was having quite a good time with it. Somewhere in 1991, when I was getting kind of towards the end of my time there, Randy announced that they wanted him to become director of the kidney center. He was assistant director, and he didn't like having to do the evaluations of his co-workers, because their salary raise depended on what he wrote, and that just wasn't his thing. So when they said that he was going to be promoted to director, he said, I want to leave nursing. I've always wanted to be a cosmetologist. I'd like to do that. So I started thinking, well, I'm going to have to replace his income, and I didn't know how that was going to work, so it was still a little bit in the future. Then he got his DUI, and so, that inconvenienced me more than it did him. He didn't seem to be bothered by having to sleep in the jail for 1 month, but I had to get up early in the morning in North Central Phoenix, do my meditation, get out to what we call the Durango Hilton, because it was on the Durango curve of I-10 in Phoenix and Southwest Phoenix, pick him up, get him to the kidney center at Good Sam downtown. Then I'd drive way out to East Scottsdale, to my clinic. So, this is like the distance between White Bear and Bloomington. Then I had to turn around and get back there by about 5:30 because he had to be back at the jail in Southwest Phoenix before 6 o'clock. If you were 1 minute late, they revoked your work release and you had to cool your rear end on the cold aluminum bed full time. And it was very over air conditioned there. So he had to wear 2 layers of sweatshirt and sweatpants. So after that was all done, and of course he didn't have his driver's license, then he put in his retirement notice from Good Sam, and found a cosmetology school on Glendale Avenue, which was about 77 blocks west of us, but it was right on Glendale Avenue, and we were only 2 blocks off Glendale Avenue in Central Phoenix, so he could take a bus there, and he did that. So this was worrying me all along, and I thought, what am I going to do? We need his $35,000, and so I hadn't really looked for anything else. I was just trying to figure out what to do. During this time, I was starting to develop arthritis, and I had a complete workup done at the holistic clinic. They couldn't find anything wrong. It was bothering mostly my ankles, knees, hips, a little bit in the shoulders, and my hands. And sometimes I could hardly write the charts out. It hurt so much. I was having to take ibuprofen 800 milligrams up to the maximum 4 times a day. I had the bottle on my desk, took a pill when I got to work. I took another one after lunch, another one before I went home, and a lot of times I took one at bedtime. So I was just really, struggling with that. One day when I was working at urgent care, the head came up to me and said, we need to have a new staff member out at the office that's on 55th Avenue in Glendale in West Phoenix, actually about a mile north of where Randy was going to cosmetology school. And would you be interested? And I thought, well, I knew I would get back to regular, reliable pay, and I knew they paid more in urgent care, but I didn't think they paid that much more because I was already up at the sort of the top level of family practice, around $70,000 a year. So I said, well, if I need to replace some income. I told her what was going on. She said, well, let me put in, discuss it with the contract people, and we'll offer you a contract. So about a week later, I get an inter-office envelope there. I pull out this offer, and I'd been thinking, together we were making about $105,000, so I needed to replace $35,000, more or less. And I pulled it out, and the offer was $105,000. I couldn't believe it was the exact number I'd been thinking of. So I went home, discussed it with Randy. He says, yeah, that sounds good. So I took it. So the next day at lunch with the doctors at the holistic clinic, when we were getting towards the end, I said, well, I need to put in my notice because, I told them what was going on, and I think I'll probably start in 4 to 6 weeks. So that'll give us time to move my patients around. And they said, oh, they were sorry to see me go, but they were so happy that I had put out to the universe the exact amount of money I would need, and that it came in the offer, and they thought that was quite psychic, and I did too. And so, they weren't angry or upset because they were going to have one less person to take the call. They just were happy for me. So we got home and got back to the office, and I started seeing my patients. And by about 3 o'clock, I looked at the ibuprofen bottle on my desk. I realized I hadn't taken the noon pill. And my hands felt fine, and all my other joints felt better than they ever had. And I got up and moved around. I went to Gladys McGarry, and I said, my arthritis is totally gone since noon. And she said, oh, that's tremendous. You healed yourself. And she sort of thought a few seconds, and she said, you were worried about your support, and the representation in your body would be your skeletal structure, and the articulations is where the energy has to move through, and you had blocked energy in all those articulations. And as soon as you accepted that new position that took care of your support problems, you healed yourself. You raised your vibration so that natural healing energy can come in. And everybody in the office was just so taken back, and they thought it was so wonderful that this had happened. And, it was nice to have that kind of support. And so that was quite an experience. Other people, of course, have had similar experiences, and some of our patients in the office had gone through things like that through some of these Edgar Cayce remedies, or just some meditations or other physical things like massage, Reiki, other treatments that they had there. So it certainly was possible. It taught me, something about self-healing. So I went to urgent care and did that for another 2 years almost. No, actually it was about 4 years. And then they opened up a new family practice clinic, and they needed me to be the senior doctor because the other doctor was younger and he'd mostly done pediatrics, even though he was trained in family practice. And I said, well, I was ready. I was done with urgent care by then, because it had been about, I think, 3.5 years of working 12 noon to 12 midnight shifts. And they said, but I can't have my salary reduced. And they went and discussed it, and they said, well, don't tell anybody, but we'll continue your urgent care salary. So that worked out for the rest of my career at Cigna. The next one will describe a few more personal readings I had, but the major incident will be how a healing course that I signed up for reconnected me with my birth mother, and that was a rather dramatic one as well.